Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Monday update. Monday afternoon here, June 10th, 2024. It's about 3:10 or 3:17, p.m. California time, 5:17 p.m. here in the great state of Texas. The latest earthquake here at 2.8 into the northern California area once again. Still seeing some movement up here as we've been watching over the past couple weeks here. Some interesting activity along the southern end here of the Cascadia Subduction Zone. This 2.9, looks like they've upgraded here, 2.9, 26 kilometers deep here underneath this land. Now this has nothing to do with the mountain range. This has everything to do with the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which sits just offshore here of the northern California area. 26 kilometers. Now that's upstream from the tremor, which occurs about 35 to 45 kilometers deep further into the subduction zone. And there is the last tremor count in the, looks like I clicked the month period here. Today's event hasn't come in yet, so I'm just going to go back here and show you guys the activity here over the last 30 days. But we're looking at about 8,390 epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia Subduction Zone in the last month. Now that's quite a bit of tremor, and it's all mainly been confined here to the southern end of the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which, by the way, can produce easily a 9.0 or greater earthquake upon full rupture here of the Cascadia. Partial rupture, anywhere from a 7.5 up to an 8.4. So I want to show you guys the regular intervals here of tremor, which is right here. There we go. Now, this here shows 10,000 years of Cascadia earthquakes where we're at today. This is actually put out probably a few years ago. So we're one step closer, 1 day, 1 minute closer to the big one out here. The average earthquake here along the Cascadia Subduction Zone, including the partial ruptures, is about 246 years. So the last full rupture quake was back in 1700, 324 years ago. So the numbers are quite... they're getting up there in terms of accumulation. So this is just the average. There has been times where we've seen longer periods here in between the amount of time, right, between a large earthquake out here. The graph here shows 9 pointers in the tallest of lines, and some of those exceeding the 9.0 threshold, which is possible, 9.2, 9.3 there along the full rupture of the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Some of the smaller lines there, anywhere from the smallest line looks to be a 7.5, but as you can see, we can get up there around 8.5, 8.2, and these are partial ruptures, 8.7, and that's a little concerning, right? Because even a partial rupture itself can produce a significant size earthquake and ultimately a tsunami here across this region, and not to mention the damage. So a lot of tremor has been taking place here in this area, along with subsequent earthquake activity upstream here. So it's not just tremor occurring with no type of earthquake movement upstream here. And this is not one of those areas where you could say, well, these little ones are going to prevent the big one. That doesn't work in this case, in this type of boundary. So let's go back here. The last, actually, what I want to do here is draw a little area on the map, and I just want to double check the earthquake activity. We're going to go point 1. There we go. I just want to check here in the last couple of months all the earthquakes in this area, specifically at the southern end here of the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Now, there's other fault systems out here, right, that are associated with the stress that gets accumulated out here against the subduction zone, fractures at the surface levels and whatnot. I'll check this out here in just a second, but I want to pull up the quake activity here in general in the last couple months. And I'm going to extend over here a little bit to the Gorda Ridges. That's a divergent zone there. That's where we, over the past couple of months, been seeing some earthquake activity as well. And that has ultimately added further strain here across the southern end of the Cascadia Subduction Zone. So not a big number, right? But some of these quakes are pretty important because they are showing where the stress is leading to, and that's upstream from the tremor. One of the most recent ones here, 4.3, right smack dab on the Cascadia. And that's within the locked area, roughly right about here where some of these other earthquakes are taking place as well. These are not big ones off the coast of Oregon, but in the locked zone where the strain accumulates. Pretty shallow earthquakes as well that we've seen at the surface levels there along the Cascadia. But the majority of them, if you look, are within about 7 to a kilometer deep or so within this area. Mainly here across the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. We did have some other movement here across the Gorda Ridges. I didn't quite go back this far on the map, but there's some of the earthquake activity here. 39 earthquakes, and it does look like mainly here across the northern California area, where we've seen a decent amount of swarming. And the key to watching these are the depths of these earthquakes. These are not surface quakes, but occurring down there into the subduction zone. Anywhere from, like I mentioned, looks like 26 kilometers, maybe even deeper right here, about 39 kilometers for that 2.6 underneath this area. So kind of keeping an eye on it. Obviously, with the tremor activity continuing, that means that we're going to see, obviously the potential here of maybe some more earthquake activity. And I think as long as we got the continued tremor activity out here, there's an elevated chance here of earthquake activity in this region. Now, let's bring up the, where'd I go here? Right here. This is a kind of a layout right here. This shows a cross-section of the subduction zone level itself. Now, the tremor occurs deeper here into the subduction zone. Of course, you get deeper down here into the melted areas below, and then you get the volcanoes there across the volcano arc area. Tremor occurs deep, but also at the same time, we can also get some deep, larger earthquakes in this area. If you guys remember, the last one was, it looks like 1965. I don't quite remember that one, obviously. I'm sure quite a few folks don't either. Oh, no, excuse me. Take that back here. 2001. I was going to say, where did my 2001 go? That one was up in Washington, if I remember right, underneath this area. And that's where the tremor gets stuck down there. And the tremor is basically a slow slip type of movement between the two plates here. The plate itself continuing to slide underneath the North American plate. And when that doesn't happen, the strain obviously can build up downstream as well. And that's when we get those deep Juan de Fuca earthquakes there of magnitude 7 plus, roughly between 30 to 50 year intervals. And the last one was back in 2001. Crustal faults can take place as well, and those are in the yellow right here, up around the Seattle area. More shallower earthquakes up here, anywhere from a M7 upwards, and it looks like hundreds of years intervals here with those. Now the deep, or at least the subduction zone locked area quakes here, those are the big ones. Obviously 7-pointer, that's pretty decent, right? Downstream, you're not really going to feel it that much. At the surface, crustal areas, yes, but the 9-pointer out here along the locked area of the Cascadia, roughly about this red line here, upward, is where the strain has been accumulating for 324 years. So that's anywhere from, like I said, a 9-pointer up, maybe even a little bit higher. And that's upon a full rupture here of the Cascadia subduction zone. Partial rupture down in Northern California, Southern Oregon would be anywhere from a 7.5 to a 8.4. 8.5, I think, is what they mentioned there on the graph. So it's interesting to watch. It's not the first time we've had tremor, obviously, but the tremor activity has been acting a little odd recently. With our last major tremor count, at least on a daily status there, was back in 2022, October. Since then, we've only seen small amounts of tremor on any given day, up until about 2 weeks ago here, when we seen the uptick in tremor here across the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. Not on a daily chart, but over time, every single day we've been seeing increasing tremor. mainly, again, down here across the southern end of the Cascadia. So we have to watch that. We have to be prepared. And the best thing to do, obviously, is have an earthquake plan, right? I've covered this many times here on this channel as far as what could happen, the tsunami time, the drop out here in terms of land adjustment, because we're not only going to have to deal with the earthquake activity out here and the damage from that, but the subsequent tsunami that's going to come in when this land drops out here a significant amount of feet. Because if you think about it, this land has been slowly going up, building up pressure. And when that, go back here to this model, where to go? Right here. When this land right here, see, this is the land that's been lifting up right up here. When it's kind of wound up tight like a spring, when it finally releases here, this area is going to drop back down quite a few feet. So you not only have, the earthquake activity, subsequent tsunami, within, I can't remember, what is it, 20 minutes or so, maybe sooner. It could be obviously a worst case scenario out there, so it's good to be prepared and not caught off guard. It could happen tonight, it could happen in another 100 years, 200 years. There's really no magic crystal ball to pinpoint when this is going to happen, but we can look at these little odd readings amongst tremor. I think tremor is going to be the key here in the future to predicting potential megaquakes out here across subduction zones. Obviously, tremor is a fairly new discovery in terms of the data and the scientific equipment that's capable of reading that tremor. We didn't have this, obviously, back in 1700. It's somewhat new. In fact, this only goes back here to about 2009. So, but I think it's key to watch what is going on here across tremor. If it's only in one specific area, and we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of tremor counts every single day for weeks at a time, what's happening down there? Something's happening. We're building up more strain than other areas of the Cascadia, and that's where we could lead to a partial rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone. And that's just, I'm watching it pretty closely. Even though I'm out here in Texas on vacation, getting a little bit of R&R, I'm consistently watching these models. I'm hoping that the tremor count goes away, but it's not. It's continuing to come in day after day. This is from yesterday. We don't have the tremor count here today yet. 473 epicenters of tremor in a very confined area here at the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. And now we're getting some further earthquake activity here. As you can see, Northern California, not a surface quake, but underneath this area, 26 kilometers deep above the tremor area for 2.9. And of course, there's some earthquake activity as well from this morning. Actually, these are, let's see here. Yeah, one was this afternoon, one was from yesterday. Still about 18, 19 kilometers, a little bit higher up than, more upstream than the deeper quake activity here. So, be prepared, folks. There's a wealth of information out there. We have to watch it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. Now, I'm not happy about it because I live out here myself. There in California. I'm just out here in Texas right now enjoying the beautiful Texas scenery and some good food out here. But we got to be prepared, whether you're in Southern Oregon, Northern California. I had a link over here that is specific to each and every little town in terms of the tsunami inundation zone and the evacuation routes. I can't remember exactly where it's at, but what I'll do here at the end of this video is provide an up next video here on YouTube, and that will take you to that video that I describe more of the tsunami information out here across Oregon. A lot of people asking me about it. Regardless, if it's a partial rupture or a large rupture, it's going to be devastating out here across this area, and of course subsequent tsunami. If it's a 7.5 out here, it may not produce a huge tsunami. Let's hope that a partial rupture would only be a 7.5, but it's hard to say because you're getting that displacement of water with that land mass adjusting. So I think regardless if it's 7.5 or 8.4, it's going to produce a tsunami. All right, so look for that video at the end of this update video. You'll see it. I always try to keep it keyed up about 20 seconds before the end of this video. 4.8 there in the Izu Islands, Japan, pretty deep. 179 kilometers deep here for that quake. I mentioned this morning that there really hasn't been a whole lot of earthquake activity out here, but it looks like maybe things are starting to get set into motion here. Some deeper activity back there into the Tonga area. That's this earthquake right here from afternoon time period. Looks like a couple hours or so ago. 537 kilometers deep. Big Island of Hawaii, really nothing major going on there for now. Just some small earthquake activity situated out there across the East Rift Zone, Upper East Rift Zone, and one earthquake well off the west coast there of Captain Cook, Hawaii, a 3.2, 37 kilometers deep. Still a lot going on out here, folks, with what as far as volcanic activity goes. Let's go over and check out the latest volcano hazards map here from the USGS. And I don't want to fearmonger out here, but I bring this information out of knowledge that I've learned on the topic at hand. And knowledge is power, right? When it comes to survival and making sure that we survive any natural hazards out here. One of the best classes I've ever taken in school and college is a natural hazards and disasters class, which I think is just an interesting topic in itself. There's so much out here that can and will go wrong, and we've been living in a time of very quiet conditions, at least us here in the States, Hawaii, and other subduction zones across the world, but they're not always going to be quiet. Here we're going back up here in terms of inflation. I was wondering about this. I was wondering if we're going to start the downturn here in terms of inflation, but here's the eruption back about a week ago there at Kilauea Volcano. Of course, we're going to see a little deflation event go on there because of, magma reaching to the surface, breaking through to the surface, and creating a little bit of lava flow out there. But now we're going back up without any downturn here. I was wondering if we're going to see it go up and then maybe go back down, but this is just going up and up and up. And we're almost at the level reached just prior to the eruption there. So I'm going to have to watch that and see how this plays out. The latest informational statement here from the USGS, which was put out today, still shows that the volcano is at advisory in yellow. The volcano is currently not erupting, and inflationary ground deformation of the summit continues, just like I showed you there on the graph. Renewed pulses of seismicity and deformation could result in new eruptive episodes within the area or somewhere else. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? It just can't go up and up and up and up like that. It's not like a balloon where it can expand so much more. We're going to see an eruption here somewhere close to the area, or maybe displacement of magma from the summit off to the East Rift Zone, or maybe even the Southwest Rift Zone. Rates of seismicity and ground deformation beneath the middle and lower East Rift Zone and lower Southwest Rift Zone are low for now. Eruptive activity and unrest has been restricted to the summit and upper Rift Zone regions until we see that displacement. So we'll continue to watch it. Kind of at a waiting period right now for that volcano there. All right, let's check out California, the rest of California here. We're kind of focused there on Northern California, but Southern California has been quite active as well, right? With all that swarming here recently in various locations. It has since pretty much calmed down. There's general small microquake activity out here, which can occur on any given day, but no major swarms, no major, I better knock on some wood. I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, it looks a little bit more quieter out there for now. Some minimal movement there across the San Andreas Fault, it looks like, just south of the bay. And of course, we'll continue to keep an eye there on Northern California. Washington area, fairly quiet, aside from a couple smaller microquakes there at Yellowstone National, or at Mount St. Helens. Yellowstone National Park here, really not a whole lot going on. One little earthquake, it looks like, from way earlier this morning, right there. Don't think that showed up here on the USGS map yet. Maybe it did. Yeah, maybe it did. No, that's way too small to be shown up there on the seismographs like that. That looks more or less like a maybe a 2-pointer, maybe even above that, because it did show up across the park. Texas oil fields getting hit. Oklahoma, Georgia, a little activity out there. Space weather. Okay, now we did have the arrival of the CME. So if you look at this real-time solar wind stream here, quite a few hours ago, we did see the arrival of that CME. It is still elevated up to this point right now, with a BZ component that has been mainly pointing north, but it does look like we're getting a little southward tilt there for that interplanetary magnetic field with the BZ component. And the aurora forecast, well, it looks like that right now because that BZ component there pointing north, not allowing the conditions to really kick up in terms of the auroras, even though we have a lot of wind speed coming in with the arrival of the CME. But things, I don't know, it just doesn't look like it's playing out. KP index peaked up a little bit, but everything's being blocked out here with that BZ component. Remember, this has got to be pointing south here. Even when we had that G5 conditions here weeks ago, we've seen very minimal aurora conditions until that opened up here and went south in a big way. So if it was something like this, a little bit more south pointing, that'd be more ideal. But I guess we'll just see and kind of watch what happens here. Let me go back here to the solar ham site. As far as the forecast goes, there it is. Nothing's changed. There's a potential aurora forecast, but again, this isn't going to happen unless we see that BZ component with a southward tilt. Did not mean to do that. Bring that back up a little bit. Flaring. What do we got for flaring? We did see another almost X flare here from departing sunspot 3697, which looks like it's probably blasting off some more flares out there, way out on the western limb, not visible. We got some of the magnetic lines there visible from the Earth, but that sunspot's way over there and still remaining quite active. It will be interesting to watch if 3597 there remains active and maybe can keep its status as a major solar flare producer. It's out there, so we'll just watch it. We won't be able to see it here on the Earth-facing side, but we will on the far side. We're left with a whole lot of very minimal conditions out there for now. The far side watch, as far as this is the CME activity from earlier. I'm going to check out the far side watch here. There's 3697 just getting out there on the western limb. It's probably a little bit more than that now. This is a little bit old, but as you can see, it's showing up there now on the graph. There's not a whole lot here coming around the western limb. If you look at the far side of the sun in general, there's not a whole lot. So we're going to be entering into a couple weeks here of quietness in terms of solar flare activity. All right, Storm Prediction Center here. A little bit of severe weather threat out here in Texas and up in the northern plains area. Nothing big for tornadoes, just a 2% across the areas in the green. Mainly wind and some hail threats out here for today's forecast. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here. I've got a few things I got to do here. And hope everyone has a good night. Again, look for that video. I'll see if I can find it and tag it at the end of this update video. That way you guys can watch it a little bit more in respect of the Cascadia and potential tsunami heights and subsidence of the land following a big quake up there. It all sounds scary, right? And no doubt it is. The best thing to do is to have a plan and prepare. It could happen, like I said, it could happen today. It could be 100 years from now. Eventually, it's going to happen. It's not a yes or it's not a maybe. What if? It will happen one day. Have a good day, folks. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later.